A fascinating book that is both incredibly difficult to wrap one's head around and deeply insightful when it comes to exposing the fallacy of our forecasting capabilities is Black Swan, The Impact of the Highly Improbable by Nassim Taleb. The book explores the drastic effects of highly unlikely and unpredictable outlier events and our penchant to find overly simplistic explanation for these events retrospectively. One of my favorite memes has the caption, "Trying to figure out what your girlfriend wants to eat," and features a scene from The Notebook where Ryan Gosling repeatedly asks the lady who was in a seemingly agonizing predicament what she wants. And in a struggle to give a straight answer, she remarks, "It's not that simple." There are a lot of things that are far from simple to figure out. The top two for me are figuring out what your girlfriend wants to eat and trying to accurately predict the future. I remember being taught in school that entrepreneurs are individuals who take risks in search of profits, which makes it seem like entrepreneurship is for impractical, gunslinging adrenaline junkies who are not afraid of failing in the pursuit of margins and wealth. To understand why this is a bogus assertion, we first need to clearly explain what risk is. All risk is chance. More specifically, the chance that the expected outcome will differ from the actual outcome. The higher the difference between the actual outcome and the expected outcome, the bigger the risk. In my experience, entrepreneurship is more about building more conducive environments for expectations of profits and wealth to stand a better chance of actually occurring. In other words, it's less about taking risk and more about reducing risk by trying to rely as less as possible on chance. The reality of startup entrepreneurship, or at least startup entrepreneurship that is done properly, is that it's actually quite boring. The wannabe entrepreneurs who treat innovation like an Evel Knievel motorcycle stunt jump are more likely to crash and burn. The uncelebrated and unspoken about realities of building businesses that last are the more scientific processes and painstaking analysis of a high number of tiny scientific experiments that follow strict rigor. The experiments aim to develop cost-effective, steady building blocks to use in constructing the bridge leaders of companies use to get from where they are to the desired expectations. Society has mistakenly hyped up arrogant gambling lunatics in starry cape suits and slapped the label entrepreneur on them, when the actual entrepreneurs are the nerdy losers in lab coats. And yes, they are losers in every sense of the word, but they are bloody phenomenal at losing, which is no surprise why they grow to become formidable business titans. Science forces us not to rely on assumptions, but to rely on hard proven facts, even if that means losing out on social acceptance to get there. There are two things about black swans which make everyone trying to create and predict them horrible losers. By horrible, I mean businesses that get so caught up in their own arrogance they end up flying too close to the sun and die a painful death. The first is that they are incredibly rare. I often think about fame and how powerful it is. Think about the wealth and influence of some of the biggest celebrities of our time. One thing I'm deeply drawn to, which billions of people all over the world share in common, is a love for music. I've had the privilege of attending concerts with some of the most prolific jazz virtuosos. I've rapped bar for bar live with hip-hop sensations and walked up a sweat in the presence of ultra-talented disc jockeys. There are songs and artists who have changed the world forever, with their craft and their names that will forever be etched as stars in history's Hall of Fame. There's a cruel allure to music that entices many young hopefuls to believe they possess the same spark, DNA, inspiration, talent, looks, creativity, genius, and even luck to ascend to global stardom. Michael Jackson was an incredibly rare global icon, and the chances of anyone amassing the same kind of reach and earth-shifting impact is so rare that many who devote everything they have towards this pursuit lose badly. Look, not to say that you shouldn't sing if you love singing, but you should be mindful of the seduction of black swans. and shift your efforts to spaces where you have much more control of the variables that can get you to your desired outcomes. In Silicon Valley, these tech black swans are called unicorns. The term was coined in 2013 by venture capitalist Aileen Lee to describe privately held startup companies valued at over $1 billion. The craziest part about these unicorn startups is that most of them aren't even generating $1 billion in revenue, but are just attracting large sums of equity investments that grow their valuations to unbelievable heights. What investors are doing when plowing their funds into these disruptive tech companies is betting that with an injection of capital, these startups can exponentially multiply the impressive performance and growth they've been able to achieve in a relatively short space of time. Investors are betting on the future. It's easy to watch LeBron James start three-pointers consecutively in an NBA Finals game and think you can do the same. Don't. In fact, you have better chances of becoming a decent basketball player by assuming you are nothing like LeBron James. Why? This will rid you of a fragile ego and allow you to become a great loser by getting your ass kicked repeatedly and thus building tenacity and collect a big enough pool of scientific data to win within and outside of basketball. Similarly, assume you are not a unicorn startup with an idea worthy of $1 billion valuation. In fact, assume your idea isn't shit and that you are a loser. A good loser who knows how to take and apply constructive criticism, but a loser nonetheless. Then allow the brutally honest marketplace to help you refine your idea into a viable product fit. More often than not, investors are wrong about the future. They just have the financial muscle to cover their losses. If you don't have the muscle to be very wrong about the future, then don't place big bets on it. You're better off taking losses you can afford in the present. I've analyzed large companies that have filed for business rescue over the last decade, and all of them have one thing in common: high levels of debt. Debt is simply taking on financing now with an agreement to pay back the finance with interest using future earnings. You see, the second thing about black swans, which makes everyone trying to create and predict them horrible losers, is that they're more complicated than what most analysts care to admit. Have you seen or read The Jungle Book? Did you enjoy it? Of course you did. I can even hear you singing the bare necessities and dancing like Baloo. But what if I told you the original author was a white man born in India who was essentially neglected by his parents and cast to grow up on his own in another country? All of a sudden, the Sigmund Freud in you kicks in and you start drawing parallels of The Jungle Book being an extended metaphor of the author's childhood abandonment. But what if I also told you the author won a Nobel Prize for Literature? All of a sudden, his writings take on a more sophisticated view and might even compel you to dive deeper into his other critically acclaimed work. But what if I also told you that the writer was a racist, colonialist, jingoist, anti-Semite, misogynist, and right-wing imperialist whoremonger? All of a sudden, The Jungle Book takes on a whole new complexity which we may want nothing to do with. You see, the simple illustration of Rudyard Kipling illustrates how blindly we can hold on to what we know and use that to make decisions about life whilst being dangerously oblivious to what we do not know. Only very bad losers take on huge amounts of debt because of an oversimplification of a very complex future. A future we do not know, and a future that requires us to be conscious about our unconsciousness. Good losers bet as much as possible on the present. Predictions are for gamblers, and as alluring as the future may seem with prospects glittering with unfounded hope, entrepreneurs who build realistic businesses know not to fall for the future's seductive empty promises. Now, I'm not saying do not dream and conjure up grandiose visions. On the contrary, all I'm saying is, if you're going to aspire to great heights, do not be a stuntman who leaves it all to chance and gamble on an uncertain future. Rather be a scientist, ruthless about the facts, and happy to take on the kind of losses today that help create a much more conducive environment for actual results to be as close as possible to your expectations.